Surely Southgate would have learned from our opening game of the tournament. Well, he didn't. Last night, England drew 1-1 with Denmark. It wasn't necessarily the result that was the problem, but the way Southgate set up. Reece, just how poor was the game?
I'm struggling to find words when it comes to England and when it comes to the tournament. You look at the tournament as a whole, and after these opening two games, there's no spark, there's no excitement. These two performances have been peak Gareth Southgate. And what I mean by that, it's nick a goal, get 1-0 up, and then sit back and defend. You can't do that in modern football. The game is all about momentum, and when that pendulum swings your way, you have to push for 2, you have to push for 3. These teams, even Denmark, okay, never going to be favourites to win the Euros, but individual players they've got in that team, the likes of Christian Eriksen and Rasmus Højlund, these players are going to punish you if you sit back.
And for me, it's it's simply like the way they set up. The team's tendency to sit back up, scoring, a lack of intensity and poor passing, which for me was a major concern throughout all of it. But again, surely Southgate would have learned from the opening game. Why didn't he? Why did he line up the way he did?
Because let's be honest, he hasn't got a clue when it comes to football, full stop. He's living too much in the past. Maybe 10 years ago, you could set up, nick an early goal and defend. Maybe you could get away with that. Maybe you get results that way. That simply isn't the case now, and you can't do that. It's pure naivety. You look back at these first two games, what has Southgate actually got right? What's he got ticked in his box next to him? Well, let's think about it. Tactically, naive, stupid. Players not in right position, not selecting the right players, not having a fit left back in the squad when you got the likes of Mitchell and Davis who have been fantastic at club level. You look at players on the bench who can change a game. The likes of Cole Palmer, Eberechi Eze, Jared Bowen, Anthony Gordon, even Kobe Mainu. These players have had very limited game time. Some have had no minutes in his opening two games. What's he done right?
And again, I agree with you. It's the fact that we have players who played for Manchester City and Liverpool, teams that press with style. That kind of baffles me really, because with the players that we have and the talent that we have, and I am stating the obvious by what I'm saying here, but we should really be playing a lot better and just kind of abandon the style that we played with last night, which was a very counterintuitive style. No passing, no intensity. We sat back again after the 1-0. And, I simply don't understand that. During the press conference after, Southgate acknowledged the team's poor performance, and he stated that there is a need for improvement, especially in utilising the ball and applying pressure. But these are things and these are problems that came up last time, that came up in our opening game against Serbia. Why didn't he address it in this game? I remember the press talking about after our opening win, that we sat back after going up 1-0. And we tried doing that once again. And when Denmark equalised with a brilliant, I can't pronounce his name. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. Højlund, is that his name? Probably. When they equalised, we simply didn't have any answers at all. So for me, I'm baffled by what Southgate got out of the team. No pressing on the Danish goal scorer, which was absolutely baffling. He had so much space and time to pick his spot, which was a magnificent equaliser, by the way. But he had so much time as well. So Reece, again, we could go on about this forever, but what does Southgate need to improve, and will it ever be improved?
It won't be improved. You look at signs of improvement. You look at signs that he's starting to get things right. There's nothing. I know he brought Gallagher on after 10 minutes in the second half, took Alexander-Arnold off. That was the right thing to do. But there's no signs that he's actually going to change the way he's playing and change the philosophy. It's one thing saying in the press conference the obvious. We knew what he was saying, and it was pretty obvious that Stevie Wonder watching that could have come up with the exact same conclusion at the end of it. The problem is, if you're looking to change the fortunes in this tournament, We have to get back to basics. You have to play players in their actual positions. And I can't believe I'm saying this about an England manager, but he's not even getting that right. First and foremost, I'm sure there is a whole debate online about what is the best position for Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's not a central midfielder. How many more times is he going to start there for England? He's not good enough. He doesn't bite. He's not fast. He's not tenacious in these tackling. And I know that Harry Kane dropped very, very deep at times during the game, and perhaps that had an effect. But even the likes of Jude Bellingham, the players you look at to create a spark, no one done that. Foden, he isn't a left winger. How many more times is he going to play there? He was much better in Denmark than Serbia, but let's be honest, the benchmark was on the floor, really, wasn't it? But what did these two chances come from? They came from the middle of the park, from playing just behind Harry Kane, taking a man on, getting a shot away. How can Southgate not see that Foden is a number 10?
And here is the average position, by the way, last night of the players on the pitch. And you can see how deeply England were sitting throughout the entire game. England, by the way, are, I think they're whatever colour we were playing in last night, purple, black. But you can see right here, and unfortunately this graphic hasn't really illustrated which team is which very well, but you get the idea of how deeply we were sitting last night. And we have the best squad in the world, right? Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden, Harry Kane. I will add Trent Alexander-Arnold to the equation as well. As for Liverpool, he's absolutely outstanding. John Stones at centre-back. Kyle Walker as well. He's one of the best wing-backs in the world. Why were we sitting so deeply last night? Was there any excuse for it?
It comes back to that one word that we're probably going to mention so many times. It's naive. It's tactically awful. Look at the players we have going forward. Saka was probably our only bright spark. At least he tried to take a man on. At least he tried to make something happen. What we've got is a blessing right now within our squad. We've got such a good balance between defence and attack. We can really go out from the first whistle and put teams under pressure. We've got the talent in the forward ranks to really take the game to any team in this tournament. That's how good this squad is. It doesn't matter if it's France, if it's Germany, Italy, Spain, teams that have started really well in this tournament. If we went for it, took that handbrake off, we would cause any team in this tournament problems. The problem is with Southgate is that he won't do it. He won't release that handbrake. And when you go 1-0 up in these games, you have to push for a second. You have to push for a third. Let's imagine in France's next game, they go 1-0 up early doors. What happens? Do they push for a second or do they sit back? They push for a second. Of course they do. They capitalise on the momentum that they've just got. The problem is when you go 1-0 up, the momentum is with you. The goal we conceded was so poor from a defensive point of view that the momentum, we couldn't get it back on our side again because it was with Denmark. You have to capitalise on the momentum when it's with you, and that sort of mentality shift, it isn't possible mid-game. You can't suddenly go from 11 men behind the ball to pushing for a second goal. That's not how football works. It's not a flick of a switch.
Yeah, which is absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. And finally, before we do go into a little bit more analysis, this is a bit of a trick question, but what does Gareth Southgate do about his Jude Bellingham and Phil Foden problem? Look, when you look at it, you know, like both players won the Young Player of the Season in both their respective leagues. Simple answer is, and I'm going to answer it for you, I'm afraid, Reese, Gareth Southgate is the problem. So again, two brilliant players. What is he doing with either one of them?
I've always said, in order to get the best out of these young players, you have to put players in their natural positions. And it sounds incredibly basic because it is incredibly basic. Next to Declan Rice, in that sort of centre mid role, put Jude Bellingham next to him and have a box-to-box midfielder. You don't need to have, with respect against Denmark, none of what I'm saying is any sort of flaw against them. They're a great, great side. Against Denmark, against Serbia, you don't need to have two CDMs. Stones and Gahey don't require that much protection. Declan Rice on his own can do that. So put Jude Bellingham as his partner and give Bellingham the freedom with play to go up and down. That's what he does best. Look at his goal he scored, the header. It came from a deep line run. And when we talk about Phil Foden, he's a number 10. He plays just off Harry Kane. That's why Foden's been so quiet, because he's out on a left wing. The two highlights that Phil Foden had in that game both came from the centre of the pitch, both came from that number 10 position. I don't understand how we're so naive in what we do. You compare our right-hand side and our left-hand side. Right-hand side of Kyle Walker and Bukayo Saka. And you compare that to Kieran Trippier and Phil Foden. It's so obvious what we're going to do. We're going to purely look at our right-hand side. That's our only outlet. Why wouldn't you put a Cole Palmer, an Eze, and Anthony Gordon out on that left-hand side, get them to hog that touchline? Think about our goal in that game. What does that come from? It came from down the wing, putting the ball in the box, and guess what happens? That's where Harry Kane shines. Yes, there's a lot of fortunate circumstances to how the ball fell to Kane, but it comes from putting the ball in the box and trying out your luck.
And look, if you look at both of the teams right here, these are the lineup of both teams last night. You can see, and this is with all due respect to Denmark, kind of like the night and day in regards to quality. And you just mentioned our fullbacks right there, even our centre-backs as well. And this is with all due respect to the likes of Yannick Vestergaard and Joachim Andersen. We have John Stones and Mark Gahey, two very talented players. Their midfield, Denmark's midfielder, Pierre-Emil Højbjerg, Christian Eriksen as well. These are players are aging, players are getting old, and I can't pronounce this name, Højlund. I'm going to try and edit that out, but he's a relatively young player. But Højbjerg and Eriksen, they're old, and we have Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice, two very young players who are considered as one of the best in their positions in the country. So if you look at the quality of our squad compared to theirs, then there's simply no excuse at all. Absolutely no excuse, and it's absolutely embarrassing in my opinion. And we already touched upon this earlier on, that Sky put up an interesting graphic right here about Trent Alexander-Arnold's performance last night. He played 54 minutes last night. He only created 3 chances. 35 of his passes were completed, which ranked him 13th in the game after all the players on the pitch. He only created 4 passes into the final third with a total of 0 tackles. If that doesn't sum up the issues that we have, then I don't see what does. What do you make of that, Reese?
I always have to sit here and laugh when you're reading those stats out, because if not, you're going to cry. How many more times are you going to be put as a central midfielder? The guy can't tackle. His sort of his passive range and his deliveries into the box can be absolutely fantastic. And going forward, he's a really useful asset. The problem is he's not a right back. What I mean by that is the fact I see him more as a wing back, when he's got the extra centre back behind him to cover him, so that when Trent gets caught half the pitch, we've still got a back 4 and we can recover. Now, I can't see Southgate. Well, you know what? Who knows at this point? I can't see Southgate switching systems to a back 3 or a back 5, whichever way you interpretate that. But maybe if we played Trent at right back, and interesting to hear your views on this as well, Ben. If we played Trent at right back and say Declan Rice, so we're still playing our back 4. Back 4 is still there. Trent at right back, but you send to Declan Rice. When Trent goes forward, you cover him at right back and almost act as the fullback. Is that a solution that's viable?
I'd say it possibly is. I love Kyle Walker, but, like Alexander-Arnold, he's just as good in that position. And maybe it's simply a case, because I don't think Gareth Southgate is necessarily that tactical astute, if that makes sense. I don't necessarily think he has the tactical capabilities to even consider something like that. So for me, I simply think it's the case of Gareth Southgate seeing that Alexander-Arnold also plays right back, which is the position that Kyle Walker plays, saying to himself, we can't have 2 players in that position. We have to keep Trent Alexander-Arnold on the pitch. He's a very good player, and simply playing him out of position. And, that is kind of like a really poor indictment into how Southgate set up last night and how he set up during the entire tournament, because it's too late to experiment on Alexander-Arnold. If he wanted to do that, we should have done it a lot earlier, not one friendly before the Euros and then, like keep it going throughout the tournament. Like it simply wouldn't work like that. But what you just said, I mean, in all honesty, I don't think Southgate has the capabilities nor the foresight to even think like that. And again, like we could go really far in the tournament, but I've always consistently said this about Southgate, that I'm strongly Southgate out. And before we do wrap up the show, again, some graphics that Sky Sports put out in regards to Harry Kane. Before I do show them to you, Harry Kane last night, he scored. He didn't have that much quality into the box. What did he make of his performance?
Problem is that I think under this Gareth Southgate system, I think Harry Kane is extremely frustrated. And now I know that when he's at Tottenham and even now at Bayern Munich, he does come back to collect the ball deep, spins and looks for runners. The problem is you ask him to do that in an England shirt, but your two sort of wingers in our system, the likes of Phil Foden and Bukayo Saka, aren't making those runs because we are so deep. So when Kane receives it as the furthest player forward, sometimes on the edge of our own box, what is he meant to do with it? How is he meant to create anything from that apart from win a foul and then it gets hoofed up the other end of the pitch? Denmark got the ball back and the pressure is straight back on us. This isn't a criticism of Harry Kane. I think he's an unbelievable, world-class finisher. He's shown that for England. Record goal scorer, 64 goals. The problem is the system. If you're going to say to Harry Kane, right, we want you to drop back, maybe sort of in line with the front three, say drop back into number 10 role, then you must have Jude Bellingham, Bukayo Saka, Phil Foden, whoever's on the left. You've got to have those four players pushing him beyond him and giving him an option. You must. You can't ask Harry Kane to come deep and not give him anything. I know the Denmark goal came from our throw-in. Harry Kane gave the ball away. But when, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, but when the Denmark attacker takes a strike on, Harry Kane's on the edge of our own box. If that don't prove to you how tactically inept Southgate is, I don't understand what will.
And here are the stats stars talking about, again, these are according to Sky Sports. These are simply the ranks as to how he performed on the pitch. He, of course, scored one goal, stating the obvious right there. He only had one shot on target throughout the entire game, and he only created one chance. He had 22 touches throughout the entire game, ranking him 22nd on the pitch, and he only won 2 duels. Now, Reese, I don't want to speak for you here, but in my opinion, a lot of that comes down to the way Southgate is set up and the poor quality he has been given to him inside the box, which I simply think is an incredibly poor indictment into how he's been setting up lately. And finally, I was going to talk about who we could potentially play if we finished third place, but I don't necessarily think that is necessary because I'm still going to be fairly optimistic. This is how Group C lines up at the moment. England are still top of their group. They're on 4 points at the moment. Denmark second, Slovenia third, and Serbia fourth. Denmark and Serbia play one another in their next game, and England and Slovenia play each other as well, and that is on Tuesday. Look, I'm still being optimistic. Surely we still finish top of the group.
Yeah, I think we do. But it comes down to the opposition in this group simply not being able to challenge us better than a France, Italy or Germany can. I think if we continue to play the way we are, then we're not going to get past the round of 16. I really believe that. I think we're going to scrape top of this group, and by scrape, I literally mean scrape. And then in the next game after that, we might get lucky and pull out a sort of poor team, and again scrape through that. But the game after that, we've got no chance. If we face an Italy or France or Germany, teams who have looked fantastic so far, and we set up against them so tactically naive, we have no chance of securing a result. It's not just happened on one occasion or 2 occasions now. This has happened so many times for England under Southgate. Think back to the Croatia As the Croatia semi-final in the World Cup in 2018, we went ahead, sat back, conceded, lost the game. Think back to the Italian final at Wembley in the last Euros. We scored an early goal in the first minute, sat back, lost the game. You look at Serbia. Okay, we won that, but that's down to Serbia not having enough quality really to push us. And then you look at Denmark. What happened? We sat up in the same way, scored early, tried to sit back, and we've been pegged back yet again. How many more times is this going to happen?
Yeah, and again, it's so poor, and I simply don't think that we'll have a chance against some of the bigger teams. But again, if you think about it, our last European campaign, we won our first game, and I think we drew our second. So, we have experienced this before, and I'm pretty sure that the whole of England reacted like that before. I've always been consistent in regards to my dislike of the way Gareth Southgate sets up. Finally, before we do go off, what is your score prediction for England v Slovenia?
And again, I mean this with respect to Slovenia. They obviously qualified for the Euros, they've done a really good job of that. It's going to be like a 1-1, isn't it? A 1-1, or we're going to scrape a 1-0. This team simply doesn't finish opposition teams off. We've shown that so many times now. We know, I can say this days in advance, we know the lineup that Southgate's going to pick. We know where Trent's going to be playing. We know Foden's going to be on the left. And we know Kane's going to sit back in central midfield. We'll scrape a 1-1 and we'll be told, oh, we should be happy with that. We're through to the next round. The problem is myself, you, Ben, and a lot of England fans now have had enough. It's time for Southgate to go.
I agree, and we will, of course, be back with some more analysis after the England-Slovenia game. Thank you very much for watching. Keep up to date with all of Glory Hunter's brilliant European content from all across the leagues as well, and, of course, the Euro tournament as well. And hopefully we'll be in a better mood then, but we'll see you all next time.